skilled in such matters might have told you that they were all by the most celebrated Japanese artists. Even then you would have felt some uneasiness at the prospect of being continually shut up in a room whose decorations were so purely Eastern. In these 2 rooms, Thurston had spent 5 years, every day corresponding to another day. He prepared his own breakfast when he wished for it. He read or wrote when he desired to do so. He lunched and dined out. He spent his evenings reading or thinking or dreaming. It was a strange life altogether, but it was his. But then the few people who knew Thurston said he was a strange man, a man who spoke little, laughed never, smiled seldom, and who was quite young in spite of everything. In point of fact, he was 27 years old. At 22 he had left Oxford with some reputation as a scholar and a mystic, and had come to town with a set purpose of following a literary career. Whether he had any ambitions at that time is a debatable question. It is quite certain that at 27 none of them had been carried out. He had a little money of his own, sufficient to pay his rent, his housekeeping expenses, his tailor's bills, and so on, and there was therefore no need to keep his nose to the grindstone. But he had made no name. He sometimes exhibited a rather heavy, rather pedantic, rather wearisome sort of article to one or other of the leading reviews, the sort of article which is spoken of with great respect by the critics, and read only by a few experts. But to the general public he was as unknown as an unborn babe. The people who had any dealings with him said that he was unsociable. He had no conversation. If by any chance he was induced to lunch or dine with you, his sole notion seemed to be to get away as quickly as possible. It was evident that he was one of those men who liked to be alone. There were times, however, when Thurston felt his loneliness, and one of them was hanging heavily about him on this particular evening. He had found it difficult to write during the day, and more than once he had caught himself wishing that a friend would come in to break the solitude, but he would have been hard put to it to say where such a friend was to be found. He never encouraged anyone to visit him at his room. 1 or 2 men, old college acquaintances, had tracked him down and called upon him, but quickly discovered that they were not wanted. It was not that Thurston wished to be rude. It was simply that a certain shyness and loneliness ran in his blood and his temperament, and made him incapable of entertaining his fellow creatures. He was essentially an anchorite, and yet there were times when his flesh called for something that it would have found it hard to define in words. As Thurston drew on his overcoat, a light tap came at his door, and he went across and opened it, not without some feeling of surprise that anyone should be there. In the faint light at the top of the landing, he saw a man that he did not recognize, a tall, sloping-shouldered man, whose back was somewhat bowed, whose knees bent in, a man who made a succession of angles in his clothing. Thurston could see that he was shabbily attired, and that his hair was long, greasy, and unclean. He had a vague notion that an unwashed atmosphere hung heavily all around and about his visitor. He held the door half open, staring at the man. The man blinked at him. "Mr. Thurston?" he said inquiringly. "Well?" replied Thurston. The man sighed heavily. "I was sent to you, sir, by Mr. Evanson. I have something to show you which he thought you would like to see. He thought you might not be indisposed to buy it from me. May I come in and show it to you, Mr. Thurston?" said the man, indicating a small parcel which he carried in the crook of one arm. "I'm not disposed to buy anything," answered Thurston, keeping his place. "But this, sir, is something very uncommon. It is seldom that any collector has such a chance of securing such a valuable curiosity," urged the visitor.